What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful. Today, I have a Marine veteran. He is also a mindset coach and an author. He's got books, The Sandbox, Stories of Human Spirit and War, and his latest book, The Road Ahead and Miles Behind. Mike Liguori. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good, my man. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on the show today.
Well, I appreciate you for taking the time, man. I did mention you were Marine, the Devil Dog. Can you just share with us, the audience, a little bit about your time with the Marine Corps?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, guilty as charged. Yes, I was a Marine for 4 years, from 2002, 2006. I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened. And so I had dreams of playing college football. I had dreams of, pursuing a career. And I had really, career actually in football. I really deep down wanted to play in the pros. I wasn't very good, but I just figured the dream was more than enough to just get me there. Loved everything football, loved everything sports and athletics. But when 9/11 hit, I was really moved and inspired to take action and sign up. That day I'll never forget because it was the first day I actually felt true emotions and anger that somebody could do this to innocent people who are just going about their day. And so signing up for 9/11, it was a huge honor for me. At first, I felt a little bit of impulsivity. What is a 17-year-old kid out of senior high school? 9/11 happens and he goes right down to the recruiter's office on September 12th. And the recruiter told me, come back in 2 months. You're not 18 yet. I said, but I want to go right now. And they're like, you have to be 18. So I waited 2 months. November 11th, which happens to be Veterans Day. And I went back down there and I signed up for the Marine Corps. After I signed up, I ended up going to Motor T School in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Obviously did boot camp down at MCRD San Diego. And then I did a tour in Okinawa in 2003. And it was funny. I was always raising my hand wanting to go to war because that's what most of us probably signed up for at that time, was wanting to go and fight and, really seeking revenge on what happened. And what it ended up for me was I would raise my hand and I didn't get picked for deployments to Bahrain or Kuwait for the invasion. And I felt like I was missing out. So I was like, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to show them that I did deserve this deployment. Well, I ended up doing an entire year in Okinawa, came back to the States and was on leave. And, they give you leave after you go from, they give you leave after you come home after a year over in Okinawa. So I was like chilling at my mom's house and this master sergeant called me from battalion, was like, is Lance Corporal Liguori there? And I was like, yeah, it's me. And they said, Master Sergeant so-and-so, we need you to come down to Camp Pendleton. You're leaving 3 weeks for Iraq. Are you ready? Yes, Master Sergeant. So I end up like getting off the phone and I'm like, oh man, it's game time. And it's funny using the football story I used in the beginning of this conversation. It was like, I felt like I was getting called off the bench to go like be in the game and like lead the team. I felt like that kind of enthusiasm and that excitement. So I ended up going down to Camp Pendleton, checked in with my unit, didn't know anybody there. But the beauty of the military is that you can get thrown in any single situation. There's more than likely men and women in that unit that are in the same situation as you. And the camaraderie gets built immediately because you guys wear the same uniform and you're on the same team. And I felt very welcomed by my unit, but I didn't know them. And when you're going to a combat zone and, rounds are coming down range, you kind of would like to know the people to the left and the right of you and like what their name is and who they're from. And so it was a baptism by fire, so to speak, and getting to know people and bonding and learning how to work as a unit. So I ended up doing my first tour in 2004 for about 8 months, came back for another 3. The moment we landed in San Bernardino, California, after a really long flight from the Middle East, my first sergeant stood up and said, everybody enjoy your downtime because you're going back in 3 months. So I already,
quick turnaround.
Yeah, very quick turnaround, but it was kind of refreshing. I have to tell you, it was refreshing in the sense that I knew I had to prepare for another game, another round in the desert. So I come back, get an entirely new chain of command. Everybody gets taken out. New chain of command comes in, prepare and go again. 7.5 months this time. Right now it's about 2006. And I come home in February 2006 and I decide to get out. So 4 months later, so you're talking about quick turnarounds. It was a year in Okinawa, 3 weeks back home, maybe 7 days back home, and then plus the 2 weeks of transitioning into my unit, 8 months, 3 months back, deployed for 7 months, came back out in 4 months. That was my entire military career. For anybody that was keeping record, that's exactly chronological record. That was it. And I ended up enjoying my time in the Marines with all my tours, and because I learned how to operate as in part of a unit. The Marines is very special to me because the Marines taught me how to take accountability and responsibility for your actions, and also to know what it meant to really lead from the front. And I met some really amazing, tremendous individuals who are really, truly focused on service and really focused on carving a name out for themselves. And they knew the military was going to get them an opportunity to step out into the real world and already be ahead, because there was inherent traits that they had taken on: bravery, courage, honor, leadership, service, duty, accountability. Those are all things that people look for, not just in corporate, but look for in just people and friends.
So did when you first enlisted, right? Obviously, 9/11 had a great impact on you and
Yeah.
enlisting. Did you plan on doing one enlistment and getting out after that, or were you trying to make it a career, or like what was the?
For all the Marines that are listening out there, you probably felt like right after you got out of boot camp, you're like, oh man, I'm going to do 20.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be in this thing for the rest of my life. And I was one of those guys. I was like, oh, I could do 8 years of the Marines. And then, I even got a little ballsy and was like, I'm going to go do force recon. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to like do my 4 years, and then I'm going to transition to the O3 field. And then I'm going to go be force recon. Yeah, that never happened. I just like thought it was cool. And, you just start talking, and, I was 18, 19 years old, thought I could I thought I could bend steel bars with my hands, and I thought I was indestructible, as most Marines think when they're 18, 19 years old, just a young PFC. But I noticed that the shift actually changed from me wanting to stay in when I got out to when I wanted to get out, when I saw that this was going to be an incredibly hard life for myself, because it was a life that I chose for the first 4 years, but a life to live for 20 years. That takes commitment, and that takes actual being relentless and having a burning desire to serve your country. 20 years in the military is magnificent. It really, truly is. And I have friends that are still in that I was with when I was a young Lance Corporal, and they're just getting out now. And it's like, hats off to those guys. Hats off to everybody out there that serves for that long and is doing the full 20, because I could barely do 2 years. So, to watch guys do 18 more years than that, man, it's pretty crazy. So, yeah.
Right. So, obviously, you got out after your first enlistment.
Mm-hmm.
I did mention you're a coach now, you're a mindset coach.
Yeah.
What kind of led you to do coaching, or how was that transition from you becoming a Marine to civilian and a coach? Was there other things that you did before that?
Yeah. Well, I like to haze everybody first as the initiation as part of my coaching. No, I'm just totally kidding. What led me to that really was, after I got out of the military, I struggled with PTSD. And it was in his initial diagnosis that I had no idea about. I was very confused by that diagnosis. Medical professionals at the time, I think, even though PTSD has always been, post-traumatic stress disorder, has been around for centuries, it's just been known in other forms and names. Shell shock, Gulf War syndrome was another one. PTSD has now become the clinical term. And getting diagnosed with that as a young man out of the military, a year after I got out of the Marines, what do you do? I didn't even know what that was. And they tell you there's no cure for it. There's nothing. You can't just take a pill and hope it goes away. What are you supposed to do? And that's where the real, I think, beginning of my journey came, which was I was at a crossroads in my transition. I was going back to college, and, things were good. I've always been able to make friends. But when you get out of the military and you're not with men and women in the trenches, so to speak, not literally, but figuratively in the trenches, when you're not driving on convoys with them, when you're not bonding with them over shared misery, and you're out in junior college campus and you're trying to fit in and you're trying to find a group of friends that may or may not understand what you've been through, it's very difficult. And having that PTSD diagnosis was very troubling for me. And it was more so because it caused me a lot of pain and anxiety. But it also made me see that I didn't really feel very valued. I felt alone, and honestly, I was very isolated. And what shifted for me was I stumbled upon meditation. And how I stumbled upon meditation was I have a very close family friend of mine who I kind of refer to as my aunt. And I asked her, I said, my mind is kind of racing. It's going all over the place. It's legitimately picking and grabbing at the worst case scenarios. It's telling me that, the world's a scary place and I should just stay in my house. I was crippled with fear. There was even a semester where I didn't even go to school for like 4 weeks. I was so afraid and so scared because all of the symptoms and the consequences of my tour had manifested in this PTSD diagnosis. So I asked my aunt about it and she said, "Have you tried meditation?" I'm like, "What's that?" And she goes, you sit and observe your thoughts." I'm like, "Sit and observe my thoughts? Are you nuts? Like, I can't even handle just me like sitting at my home playing Halo. And there's like running thoughts from the war and there's these voices and feedback loops and patterns and things just start constantly just being on repeat." But I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm willing to do anything. And so I listened to a free meditation by Deepak Chopra, who's a very famous meditation teacher, a famous teacher, guru, you could so to speak. And it was a 10-minute meditation. And I did this in about 2008. And I sat in a chair outside my house in my backyard where I grew up in Northern California. And I sat there for 10 minutes. And he said, "Don't give attention to your thoughts, pay attention to your thoughts. Be an observer of them. Act as though your thoughts are cars driving on the freeway and you're just watching the freeway." And that was so powerful for me. And I remember that, then recognizing that the mind contains all of the answers and it gives us anything that we want in our life. We can create any sort of life we want. We can truly, I believe, and this is just my opinion, I believe that being able to cultivate an amazing mindset through creation and unlocking your true desires in life, you can have whatever you want. You can stop yourself from self-sabotage, limiting beliefs. You can empower yourself to create a life that you've always wanted. You can develop determination, discipline, willpower, self-belief. You can put your mind to almost anything. And yes, you can bend your mind. You can bend a spoon with your mind. I don't teach that. And I don't coach people to do that. But that's how powerful the mind is. And it's separate from our brain. The brain is the organ. It's the thing that pulls the levers for us, and it's such a supercomputer. It's a processor. The mind is the actual container about how we see ourselves in the world. And if we're able to have the mind be underneath our control and condition it to do all the things that we want to do, there's no greater weapon in the world than, a person's mind.
So Mike, you say to help out with your PSD, you found meditation that was recommended to you. And then, you talk about mindset and getting past your limiting beliefs. How soon before, you had control over that over your mind, did you start, maybe start coaching or teaching others to kind of do the same?
Yeah, I would probably say I've been coaching and teaching others probably for the last, I would say 3 years. I would say when I've got full control of it, it took me quite some time. I don't have the exact number to it, but I will say I do want to expand upon what you said, because as you being a human being, you will always battle old programming, no matter what. It just doesn't go away.
Yeah, it's always there.
It's always there. You'll have thoughts and stuff from your inner child that comes out and remembers times when mom and dad didn't give you candy or at Halloween because they said you had too much. And so you may somehow, some way your genetic code predisposed you to believing that you're not worthy of receiving gifts, all from a childhood. And the voice just comes out of nowhere and you're going, whoa, where did that come from? That's how powerful the mind is. For me, I would probably say until I got a really, really good grip on it, on being able to truly understand it, it took me probably about at least 5 to 7 years of deep meditation, of reading, of committing myself to working with coaches. I still work with coaches that are at the next level of life that I want to achieve. I believe that life is just a continuing series of levels. There's always one more level for us to achieve. It's never ending. The Tony Robbins and the billionaires of the world, there's another level they're trying to achieve. Everybody's got a level. We're just all playing the same. We're playing the same game. We're just playing at different levels. So I worked with coaches. I worked in organizations. I had amazing mentors. And then, in the veteran nonprofit sector that I worked in tech, I had coaches that I worked with who poured into me. I had people that I met along the way who were incredibly high performers, who shared with me some of the secrets and the tactics that led them to everything from building 7-figure businesses, 8-figure businesses, to playing in the NFL, the NBA, the highest achieving championships, running massive organizations. And they all said the same thing. It's all about self-belief in your mindset. So to answer your question on that part, for me, I would probably say mastery is something I'm still chasing. And I say that because I believe it's a lifelong game. When I truly understood what PTSD was, it took me about 5 years because I had to read all the research on it. I had to read how this works. I had to see, ancient scripts from the old Indian gurus. I had to read what Deepak Chopra was saying, because it was all really, if you go back in history, they all say the same thing about the mind. Even the Bible says the same thing about the mind, very similar things to the mind as the Indian gurus do, as Buddha did. Everybody, all these ancient scripts all say the same thing about the mind. It is your most powerful tool that you've been given as a human being.
It's just all written in different languages, different terminology.
Yeah. Everybody sees the world differently. So, I talk a lot about truths, and people say, I've gotten into, I would say, for the sake of the conversation, I've gotten into friendly debates with people on social media, let's just say, about truth. They say, well, truth's not subjective. It totally is subjective.
Yeah.
Because a truth is your truth in the way that you see the world. There are universal truths out there, like we need to breathe air in order for us to be alive. That is a universal truth. There's also universal law for some people is that if you give, you will receive, right? In some form of another. But for me, it's truth. What your truth is, how you see things, and what you believe to be true for yourself is very much different than mine, but we're living in the same world.
Yeah.
And so really what it comes down to is knowing and understanding what you truly believe for yourself. And then also knowing and understanding that other people are going to have their truth about what you should be doing, about how you should be living your life. And if you are not firm in what you believe in, you will be easily conditioned to go off path and do what they tell you to do. And then you will be unfulfilled. So I love the truth component of all that, because once my clients truly understand and harness the power of the truth, then what happens is the entire world opens up for them, because they start realizing that so-and-so has an opinion. Mom and dad have an opinion about me and how I'm running my business. And that's not truth. That's not fact. That's just how they see. Yeah. And they may or may not agree with you.
Completely agree. 100%. I mean, each of us have, like you said, have our own truths. And then if you're not confident in what you believe in and what you stand for, then you'll be easily, I don't want to say fooled, but maybe easily swayed to believe in other things. So
yeah, exactly. It's like imagine being in the Navy and then having a bunch of Marines tell you that the Navy's not good enough. And then you go, maybe the Navy's not good enough. It's because you don't believe what the Navy's teaching you is a truth or a version of something that you can gravitate towards. So that's an easily conditioned. And obviously, there's a friendly rivalry between Marines and Navy, but the reality is that if you look at things, it's so easy for us, especially in this day and age. Social media tells us that we're not good looking enough. We don't have enough money. We don't have all of these things. Everybody has so much input coming into them. We pick up our phones first thing in the morning and we start questioning ourselves throughout the day because we saw a reel or we saw a clip or we saw something else, and nobody really knows, like, what I believe, is that actually what's happening? And so we question everything, and then we start questioning ourselves. But then what happens is indecision and inaction take place because we're so afraid of making the wrong decision, because we've heard 40 other people online that we follow tell us all the ways that we can make money doing real estate, 40 different ways, 40 ways of how they did it. And they all work, but we don't know which one works for us.
Yeah. I want to go back, Mike. I want to go back to your coaching and talking about mindset. A lot of there might be listeners out there, and I think it's most especially, with our community, the military veteran community.
Yeah.
There at times we can be too prideful as far as like maybe reaching out for help, and if we, we want to find a coach or a mentor.
Sure.
What is your recommendation for those who might feel that way, and like how do they get past that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, you can always call me, but you can always call me. I'm here. But with all that being said, I think the first thing that comes to the fact is pride is usually associated with fragility. And what I mean by that is that if we have a sense of pride, and pride is not a bad thing, but it's usually associated with fragility, meaning I'm protecting myself from being exposed to a vulnerable piece of who I am that others may take advantage of. So when we become prideful and we don't want to ask for help, we're being afraid is seen as somebody that needs help, because help is being associated with weakness. And this is a very common problem in the military as well, is that asking for help is actually shown as a sign of weakness. You're not supposed to ask for help, but ironically, you're supposed to do things in teams. So how does that work?
Right.
Somebody else has got to come over and carry your rucksack for you. Somebody else has got to help you man the gun. Somebody else has got to help you clean the deck. But you're not supposed to ask for help. You're just supposed to be part of a unit. So the first thing to identify for anybody that may be saying, I know I need help, but I'm not sure where I need to go. The one question I always ask myself is that what would make you feel safe? And we don't talk about this enough, because we also are seeking out safety, but actually cultivating an environment for us to say, I want to feel safe. It could be therapy. It could be a group of buddies. It could be talking on the phone with your friends. Whatever the case may be. Again, if we go back to the truth thing, your truth is really, how do you cultivate an environment of safety for yourself? And then the second part is that if it makes you feel safe and you're not sure, then go deeper. What would make you feel accepted? Well, acceptance, first of all, starts with you. So let's take the pride out of it. And if you're feeling that sense of pride, for all of you listening out there, let's take that sense of pride and just remove it for a second. And let's really, really focus on right here, right now, what would really empower you to take the next step in your life? Is it going to be help, or is it going to be your pride and ego? Your ego loves you, and all it wants to do is protect you. That's its job. So make friends with the ego, but don't let the ego bully you into a corner saying you don't need anybody else. You can do this stuff yourself, because the reality is nobody in life gets the things that they want without asking for help along the way. I definitely haven't. I've had a slew of people in my lifetime help me. And I'm so grateful for that. But had my pride gotten in the way, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Yeah.
So, for military guys, I would say the one thing is to really think about the environment of safety and cultivating acceptance of yourself, and knowing that it is okay to ask for help, because you're a human being and you're flawed by design. You are not perfect. So the need to be able to receive help actually is going to make you better, because you're recognizing the things that you know and you don't know. And there's true beauty in that, because true humanity is recognizing that we're all flawed. We're all in this together. We all may look different, walk different, talk different, but we're all in this game of life together, and everybody needs help.
I think that's I think that's what the military has gotten better at, though, over the time,
Mhm.
especially with Iraq and Afghanistan,
Yeah.
with just the organizations and companies that are out there, kind of helping them, providing that avenue of
Yeah.
resources or assistance or whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, so Mike, since you've started your coaching, what would you say has been kind of like your most rewarding experiences you've had since being coaching thousands of others?
Yeah. I will tell you the one thing that's been the most fulfilling is removing, um, borrowing a line from one of my teachers, removing the veil off someone's face
Mm.
and seeing that everything that they truly wanted was right in front of them the whole entire time. We tend to live in these constructs that we've built for ourselves, and sometimes we do it intentionally or unintentionally. Everything getting put upon us from mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, ex-girlfriends, any sort of experience in life has an impact on us. The most profound thing that I have found is when a human being works with me and they get into the weeds of their mind and they start recognizing their thought patterns there. There are things that they believed in them, that they believe about themselves that they never even came up with in the first place. They were like, I don't even know who told me I wasn't good looking or I wasn't in shape or I wasn't good enough. Nobody, they didn't come up with that of yourself. You didn't come up with your perception of yourself. It was an input of experiences that came to you. And then you started realizing like, oh, okay, and then you made the decision for yourself based on that input, who you are as a person. But if you really truly think about it, a lot of these negative beliefs we have, we've heard it along the way from somebody else. So the most rewarding experience is being able to say, hey, look, first of all, you're amazing. Everybody's amazing because you're a human being and you are this amazing creature that's been designed to think, feel. You have a consciousness and a brain that is like nothing in the world has that. So your first off is amazing. And the second off is let's take that veil off. Let's remove the curtain for a second and let's show you what is possible. Everything you want is out in front of you.
When you've been dealing with your many clients, right? What would you say has been like, what's like their biggest obstacle? Is it
Yeah.
relationships, finance, like
Hmm.
is it just mindset in general, or
Yeah. I'm laughing because the first one I thought about the moment you said finance is like everybody's got money problems.
yeah.
Oh man, I could talk about money problems all day, and I will say it's love and money. And it's love of the self. That's the big one. And it's money problems. And to drill that down a little bit more, the two distinctions that I'll have with that is that when I say everybody has money problems, it's everybody has a view or a truth about the value of money to them and what they are willing to do to earn or receive that money. There are people that I've worked with in the past who wanted $1 million a year, and they thought they had to systematize their business. They thought they had to put all these processes in place. And it actually boiled down to dealing with mom and dad not having money when they were a kid and going through this fact that like they had a history of underselling themselves and their products and services. So it was always a struggle for them to make money. They couldn't figure it out. We did some really deep work on this client and they go, oh my God, I've never truly known what the value of money is to me. But I've been in business for this long. How did I not see this? I call it detective syndrome. If you ever watched a detective show like if you ever watched a detective show like CSI, they're looking everywhere else
Right.
except for the answer, which is right underneath their nose the
It's a
entire
lot
time.
deeper. It's a
Yeah, it's like
deeper
it's right
problem.
there. And look, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when we
Right.
talk about money specifically, the biggest holdup is somewhere along the way, mom and dad had a viewpoint of money that they inherited from their
Right.
mom and
Definitely.
dad before
Right.
them. And I see this very commonly with first generation Americans too. Especially with children of immigrant parents that came over here with nothing. There is an attitude that immigrant families have towards money where the children inherit it and they equate all of money to being that's the way that you get money, because generally when these immigrant families come over here, they work so hard, They bust their butts. They do everything they can to provide. They come to America to have an amazing life and provide for their family. And then the children take that on. And then when the children take that on, they do the exact same thing, but they realize that maybe in that scope, what mom and dad did to provide a better life for them is not the exact same goal or scope of work or scope of life that they want for themselves. $10 million may not be the reason, the way that you get that, what mom and dad did for you. Mom and dad got you in the door, but it might take a different mindset. It might take a different level of beliefs. And again, there is no right or wrong with anything in perception of money. There's just, all it is viewpoints and truths. But if you really truly think about it, what an absolute blessing for just an example of that you see the hard work, the dedication, the discipline of mom and dad. You know, if you come from a first generation family, or you just even come from a family where mom and dad were blue collar workers and they just have busted their butt their entire lives and they taught you something magnificent. And the hard work will always get there. The hard work will always pay off. But there is a level of a mindset that you have to have around money when you start going into the high 6 figures and 7 figures. Because even in salary negotiations, I've had clients even say, like, I'm afraid to ask for what I really, really want. Well, what do you really want? Well, I want over $200,000. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. That's almost $250,000. You know, it's in the $250,000 range. It's a lot of money. So again, I say all that because that's the most common thing. And I use the example of first generation Americans as children, or I should say second generation. I use this example because it's very common to feel that type of pressure, that it's, if the child wants to do something bigger, who's now an adult, they want to do something bigger. That's not, they want to do something bigger on builder's massive company, or they want to go do something that requires a different way of looking at money. There's this internal conflict that they're letting mom and dad down because mom and dad sacrificed so much for them during their journey to create a better life for them. So there's always this inherent guilt that if I actually want to go out and do something that is not safe, right, or is risky, like entrepreneurship, it's not doctor, it's not a lawyer, it's not working at a big company, it's like completely risky. There's this sense of guilt and shame around it, that they're somehow throwing all of mom and dad's work that they've spent their entire lives providing for that one person, they're throwing it all away. So you get a lot of that money, the guilt and the shame around money and self-value. And then I'll touch on this really quickly, is the love piece. If you saw your parents not be in a very healthy relationship, it is going to impact your worldview on how you give and receive love, especially if you come from parents of divorce, especially if you've seen, you know, if there was an affair in the relationship. And again, there's all these different scenarios, but everything that we've seen or we view ourselves in the world, we picked up along the way. Those are pretty much the big 2 issues that I see the most with, is really love and money. Money's actually probably the bigger one, and it's very fascinating.
Yeah, it's funny when you were describing as far as like being a first generation, you know, with parents who were immigrants, right? And I was kind of just reflecting on kind of like my situation, and
Yeah.
you know, obviously my parents coming from a third world country have worked so hard to provide for me and my brother,
Yeah.
and you know, we've no issues at all as far as like have a home with, and no relationship issues with them at all. I think it was just like the mindset thing, right? Like obviously they never had uh, much from where they were, and they were always trying to just keep everything and save everything, right? And
Yeah.
not necessarily trying to invest and take those risks.
Mm.
Whereas, you know, when I grew up, you know, just exposing myself to, you know, other people and kind of just we mentioned levels,
Yeah.
right? I think it just getting to another level as far as like where can I take this? Whereas my parents laid that foundation, how can I raise this to another level
Yeah.
uh, of investing, you know, and things like that. So
Yeah. And it's amazing, right, what you've learned from your parents too, because I'm sure from your parents. And where did your parents come from?
the Philippines.
Yeah, so the Philippines, right? And I have to tell you, my mom was raised by Filipinos. An amazing, amazing culture. So happy, and just very grateful for things. But,
Yeah.
and again, but when you want something more and you grow up in that, especially in those types of environments, there always tends to be an internal clash. And I'm sure for you, seeing your parents operating from a place of, I'm coming over from the Philippines. I want to create this environment for my children and I want to give them an opportunity. And
Right.
so it's almost kind of like, don't F this up. You've probably
Right.
heard that when you're like kid, maybe directly or indirectly, but mom and dad were probably like, hey, like, you go to school or go to the military and you just do this for 40 years and you'll be okay. But as you grow older, you start thinking about like, oh man, especially now in this day with the options that we have. We have
Definitely. Yeah.
crypto, there's Web3, there's social media influencers, there's starting your own company. Starting a company has never been easier. That doesn't mean that it's easy, but it's never been easier to start your own practice or do your
Yeah.
own thing. So I'm sure there's so many things that you've learned from your family, but also I'm sure there's been an internal conflict with you as well, because the bigger, as you know, a saying I love is that the bigger the climb to the top of the mountain, the further the fall. And so
Definitely.
if you really get that, that embodies and encompasses everything you need to know about the game of success. And most of us take that on when we feel a sense of guilt or shame around us truly achieving, because the higher we get up the mountain, we're like, oh man, if I look down right now, that's a pretty far fall. And then who's going to catch me? Are mom and
Yeah.
dad going to catch me? Are they going to be angry at me that I didn't do something for 40 years? I didn't work the pension. I didn't stay at the hospital. I didn't stay in med school, or I didn't stay at like Microsoft, or I didn't stay at Google for 40 years. It's a different game to play, and the guilt and shame comes up too. And I'm sure your parents provided amazing for you and just teaching you how to work hard.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think it's not too many people want to take that risk, right? So
Yeah. Well, why would you? I mean, it's
yeah.
a risk. I mean,
Yeah.
we love hitting the home run, but not stepping up to the plate to take an at bat, because there's a fear of striking out.
Right.
Everybody wants to be Bitcoin millionaire,
Everybody wants to be
right?
a winner, but they don't
Yeah,
want to get in the
everybody
game.
wants, right, exactly. Everybody wants to be Michael Jordan without putting in the work. Everybody
Right.
wants to be Elon Musk without putting in the work. Everybody wants to be Bitcoin millionaire without putting the money into Bitcoin. It's
Yeah.
just the reality of this. It's a situation. And this is because we live in a world of on demand. I want things right here, right now. I still think to this day, the day society truly changed was not so much the internet. It was more so when Amazon brought in one day delivery. I
No,
think it
instant
really,
gratification.
yeah, right. It brought, everybody was like, oh, well, why would I leave my house? I could just order
Right.
everything. I can Instacart. I can do all these things. And, knowing even for just yourself, when you want something bigger, it's how quick can I get to the finish line? And we forget the process in places is where actually the real gold in the experiences and the lessons that we learn in life are actually in the process and the journey to becoming the Bitcoin millionaire, to becoming the next Elon Musk, to um, building our own company that's doing 7, 8 figures a year and we're impacting lives. I enjoyed my work because all the years that I suffered, all the years that I learned and made mistakes and, learned from these lessons, and life showed me experiences and opportunities and really truly taught me to cultivate a mindset that was more open and holding space and creating containers for people and showing them how great they can be, because I know what it was like to not have self value and worth, and being able to work with the people I have over the years. It's been so phenomenal watching relationships transform, watching people make money the moment that they um, start recognizing that they believe they receive money, they'll get the money. And it's not even, and it's not it sounds like it's easy, but it's really not. It's years and years of battling. Everybody deals with it.
Yeah. So Mike, I want to, before we transition to the second segment
Sure.
here, I want to talk a little bit about your book,
Yeah.
your latest book, The Road Ahead and Miles Behind. Talk to our audience a little bit about your inspiration for writing this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of parents, I had a very tumultuous, we've been talking about parents and families and cultures. I actually was raised by a father and a mother who were both very hard workers. I was raised by a dad who was the first one in his family to go to college. I was also raised by a dad who grew up in a culture of, from his father, of working hard. and providing. And for all the men out there, you'll know that men have a history of being relied on for provision. In some cultures that rings true, in some other relationships it doesn't. But over time, men have always been seen as bringing home the bacon, the breadwinner, making the money, putting food on the table. That's our job. And that was my dad's job. He was an entrepreneur, still is, going on 50 years. And when you're a young boy growing up in a family, and I grew up I grew up with a dad who had money, and I grew up with a mom who didn't. So I was very much exposed to both realities of the world, which is I know what it was like to feel safe and secure, but also know we never lived over our means. You know, my dad wasn't a flashy guy, but we were safe and secure. We had money. And, but he always told me if I ever wanted something, I had to work for it. And my mom was the same thing. There were days and nights where, you know, my brother and I, we are not small men. And, you know, when you're in high school and you're trying to play athletics, and those of you who have teenage kids in high school, you know, they love eating seconds and thirds because they're growing like beanstalks, man. It's just their plants. It's just crazy. There were days where my mom would say, hey, I just go easy on the seconds. And that was not out of like, hey, don't be wasteful. It was out of like, we got to make sure we have enough food from month to month. So the inspiration for this book came from the idea that, you know, my parents divorced when I was very young, and I was looking, and I took that on for myself. And I'll never forget this, right around this age of 7 and 8, where I realized that mom and dad weren't together, and I thought it was my fault. So during that time frame, I started bouncing back and forth between my dad's house and my mom's house. And, you know, I would spend a couple days during the week with my dad, a couple days during the week with my mom. And I was connecting to my dad in as many levels as I truly could. And I was trying to connect to my mom in many ways. But when you live a life of security and once, you know, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, you live a life of like, is the lights going to stay on? Are we going to get food? And then Wednesdays and Fridays is like, oh, cool, man. Like it's pizza night, like, and food's on the table. You didn't worry about that stuff. It's very conflicting for a young boy. More so than anything, I just wanted to have a relationship with my dad. And I started noticing the older I got, the harder he worked, and he was providing for the family. And he was in a new marriage, and he was building another company and building another business. And I started growing angry and resentful towards him. So expand upon that to about 30 years of just this back and forth between us, you know, friction. Dad, you know, I believe in certain things. My dad believes in certain things. They don't always line up. And anybody who knows who has conflict with their parents, generally your parents don't believe in the same stuff you do. And you just like, Dad, Mom, I just want you to see like what I believe in. And it's kind of funny because when we're kids, Mom and Dad tell us what to do. And we're like, don't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing. And I've been a rebellious teacher. I'm sure everybody in here has been a rebellious teacher that's listening to this podcast. There's also the irony in that is when we get older and our parents get older, they want to go out and do stuff. And then we're like, Mom, Dad, don't play pickleball. Like, Mom, Dad, you shouldn't be going dancing. You're too old for that. Mom, Dad, stop driving. And it's funny, we try to change them. And so that type of resistance that I felt when I was a kid, that my dad wouldn't pay attention to me and my mom was trying to change me in that over being mama bear type of stuff. It was very hard for me. And so that created a lot of tumultuous relationship between my dad and I. So this happened about 2 years ago in the middle of the COVID pandemic, when, you know, the year we all love and the world shutting down. I basically decided to turn inward towards my spirituality. I've always been a guy of faith. I've always been a guy of spirituality. And I really turned into that and said, you know, I want to turn towards God. And, you know, for the sake of this podcast, God, source, spirit, universe, I want to be respectful to all beliefs and all walks of life for that. Whatever you believe in. I talked to God and I said, God, you know, I'm 36 years old. How long am I going to hold on to this resentment towards my father? And I just would ask, and I would pray, and I would ask. And I finally landed on this ask, which was, God, if you're listening to me, I just want a relationship with my dad more than anything in the world. And even if it's just for us to have a cordial ground to walk on. Well, be careful what you ask for when you're speaking to the higher powers, the universe, God, source, spirit, because you will get what you want. And that's something I even teach in my coaching and with my clients, is about the power of actual like thoughts, feelings, and actions in total alignment, because you will get what you want. And I really wanted a relationship with my dad. So 2 weeks later, he ends up calling me 3 weeks before my birthday and says, you and I actually don't hang out. And I was floored. I was like, wait, you and I don't hang out? Like, how long did it take you to figure that out? And he said, how would you like to go on a road trip with me? We'll drive from Las Vegas to Sebring, Florida, to go to this automotive race called the 12 Hours of Sebring. And it's going to be really fun. And I got to tell you, I was floored. And I was also angry. And I was also revengeful, because all the years that he had either left me at after school care, my mom had to come get me, all the years that like he didn't really like pour into me as much as I thought he would, were coming up. And I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be my ultimate, like, screw you to you,
Get
Dad.
back at him or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like, once and for all, I'm going to get you. Well, the moment I wanted to do that, there was this voice that popped in my head, and it was clear as day. And the voice said to me, Michael, you need to go on this trip with your dad. It may be the only one that you get with him.
Yeah.
And I heard those words, and I'm hearing my dad, kind of pitching me. And my dad was in the ad agency business. He was, if you guys have seen Mad Men, my dad's a real life Don Draper, very much like pitching brands, big ideas, knew how to talk to people. And I keep hearing him selling the experience, not even the race. He's just selling the experience of driving across the country with him in a Mercedes Sprinter van, sleeping in the van, the two of us like joining, men being on the road. That's all he's selling to me. And I'm like, no way. But when that voice came into my head, I realized that what if my dad in his 70s, this is all I get? What if I'm lucky, I get maybe 10 more good years with my dad? Yeah. And so I went, and I got off the phone with him. I felt a little bit of regret, a little bit of shame, but I also felt like something magical and powerful is going to happen on this trip. But I had to roll the dice, because my parents and your parents are getting older. How many more times do you have with them? How many more good years do you have with them? Not just years. How many more good years do you have with them? And all of these thoughts came into my mind when I said yes to him. I said, you know what? I'll know once and for all if it was worth it. And we ended up in 11 days, over 2,200, 2,500 miles, so to speak. We drove a lot. And my dad's one of these guys, when you get in the car, like, he just goes. It was like very much like a military convoy. Like, we did not stop. We took bathroom breaks. Like, we fell asleep. We got back in the van and we drove. But we camped out and we bonded. And I got to ask him about what he was like before I was born. And I cracked him wide open. All the things I never knew about him, it just all came to the surface. And so the story really tells about a father and son ever tumultuous relationship over 30 years, repairing their relationship through stories of faith, healing, and redemption. And it's a book that's very personal to me. It's a book that I hope that people out there who are parents can take the opportunity right now to bond with their children in a totally different way, to create that safety and cultivation, that love and acceptance that at least I saw from my dad, that I now have. But it took me 30 years to get that. Yeah. And then if you're an adult listening to this podcast, and mom and dad has always been kind of the thorn in your side or the pain in your butt, and you've been battling with them for years because you've been trying to change them, like I said before, the irony in that. This is an opportunity for you to understand that it's never too late to have something with your parents. That maybe just meeting them where they are, showing them love and acceptance, and just knowing that they did the best they could with what they had at the time that they had it. And that was one of the greatest lessons I learned from my dad. I expected my dad to be this amazing father, superhero, all of this stuff. And in some ways he was. He is an amazing provider, and he taught me certain things. But at the same time, I held such a grudge against him, and I never fully accepted him for who he was. And it's ironic when you ask me, like, what inspired you to be a mindset coach? Was really teaching and loving everybody to embrace humanity, to embrace your humanity, because that's what I had to do for myself all of the years after I transitioned. That's what I had to do with my dad, was just embrace him, that, hey, my dad's a human being. He's got shortcomings and flaws just like I do. I've probably inherited some of those things. That's probably why we like butt heads,
Yeah.
you know? And the story just is really, it has some really amazing, powerful lessons. It also just really is a feel-good story about you could always have something with your parents, and they want something with you, and don't ever write them off, because as your parents get older and as you get older, time is limited.
Yeah. I think that's a great message, man. Like, you can always create these moments, right? And you mentioned how many more years you have, but really, how many more moments are you gonna have with your parents?
Yeah.
Especially, if you guys, we all don't live with our parents. If you live in different states,
Yeah.
how many more birthdays are you gonna have with them? How many more moments can you create? Are if you visit them once or twice a year, like, how many days are those?
Mm-hmm.
And just and try to enjoy those last remaining years, because you don't want to end up regretting what could have been, or what moments you could have created when they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a famous clip with Rich Roll and Jesse Itzler. And
I
if you
love
guys
Jesse
get a
Itzler,
chance,
man.
yeah, Jesse's
Yeah.
Jesse's amazing. Such a great
Right.
dude. And what I love about him is he was on the Rich Roll podcast like years ago. He goes, "How old are your parents?" And he said 70.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, so how often do you go see him?" He goes, "Oh, twice a year." He goes, "I would say you got 20 times left to see them."
Yeah.
And you could see Rich Roll's brain kind of just turning like, "Oh my God, I only got 20 more times to really truly hang out with my parents because I'm not close to them." And this book very much talks about that. It's about seizing the opportunity in the moment, that your future, your worries, your anger, your frustration, those are all valid. They're all valid. But don't let that get in the way of having something with the people that raised you. Obviously, if it's by choice. And, men have a very complex relationship. Fathers and sons have very complex relations, just like mothers and daughters do. But, if you're a dad out there right now and you have a good relationship with your son, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Keep pouring into them, because they will remember that for the rest of your life. I had a client of mine tell me that, for me, the number one secret to being an amazing dad is not quality of time, it's quantity of time. The more time that I spend with them, I actually find that my children want to be around me more. Than creating these like sanctioned off moments of like, we're going to spend quality time together. You remember that when you were a kid, your dad's gonna be like, "This is a great outdoors. We're spending quality of time together." And the kids would just be like, "I don't want to be out here." But he always said the quantity of time is what the kids really remember, always hanging out with their dad, because life moves fast. And that's really, truly the beauty of what I've found in this book is that, I used to not talk to my dad a lot. I talk to him multiple times during the week, and we talk, we talk about our same stuff. We talk about stocks and business and sports and college football, but every once in a while that trip comes up. Every once in a while that trip comes up and life comes up, and my dad's, kind of semi-retired, and, you can see how happy he is. Yeah. He's kind of like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." I'm like, get to kind of do whatever I want. And it's funny because we live in a world where it's like, it's nonstop connectivity. It's like, there is no work, there is no like punch your time card, go home. There's none of that stuff anymore. Email, social media, phones, all sorts of stuff. We're always on.
Constant. Yeah.
Constant. Yeah.
So Mike, talking about the book.
Yep.
Tell our audience, where can they find it? Where can they
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So the book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And I talk a lot about themes from the book on my Instagram account. So if you follow me at Mike.Liguori, that's Liguori, I do a lot of content. I post reels on there. I promote the book on there as well. And again, it's a great time to get a last minute gift for your dad, because it comes out on the 14th of June and Father's Day is on the 19th, I believe. So it's on that Tuesday, and Amazon does the 1-day delivery. So if you're like running out of ideas, That's that's gonna be my shameless promo for the book. No, but all seriousness, you can buy it on Barnes and Noble and Amazon. I'm incredibly grateful and honored to anybody that buys a copy, and I would love to hear how it's impacted you reading it. My goal is to inspire as many people as possible, millions of people as possible, in this story of healing and redemption, in hopes that it brings clarity of thought around their relationship with their parents, and also just being able to accept and forgive themselves, the individual.
Awesome, man. So make
Yeah.
sure you all check that out. Again, the book is The Road Ahead and Miles Behind. Check it out on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So Mike, going into the second segment of our podcast here. So this is what I call the Fast Five. These are the same 5 questions I ask all my guests. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I love lightning round. This is good. Yeah, lightning round. Okay.
First question. What's one hobby you enjoy?
What's one eating? I love eating. I'm like a foodie. I'm actually in the middle of 75 hard right now, so I can't really do eating. But I enjoy eating and cooking. It's really fun for me.
Next question. If you had to choose one person to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
Oh man, there's so many. Anthony Bourdain is the first one that comes to mind. Anthony Bourdain was he was my hero. He really was. I learned how to write and I learned how to storytell. And more importantly, he taught me through a lot of his content how to connect with people. So I'd probably want to hang out with him or Jesus. I know it's a toss up, but
And yeah, I mean, Anthony Bourdain, yeah, I agree. Great storyteller.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Next question. Recommend a book for audience to read.
Psycho-Cybernetics. Maxwell, what's his name? It is escaping me right now. Do I have this book here? Oh, here we go. I have it right here. Hold on. Give me just a second. All right. Psycho-Cybernetics, for all of you who are watching video, by Maxwell Maltz. This was recommended to me by a dear friend of mine. And I have to tell you, I read this book once a year. This is a book I suggest to every single person to read. It's phenomenal. This book, you always will. It's one of these books, like every time you read it, there's a new lesson. But Psycho-Cybernetics is the book that I recommend. Maxwell Maltz.
All right. Psycho-Cybernetics.
Psycho-Cybernetics. Yeah. And you can't miss it. It's like just said psycho. It's like red print. If you're on Amazon and even if you misspell it, this will pop up. I swear to God. It's an amazing book.
Next question. What's your favorite quote and why?
It all starts and ends with you in mind. And the reason I say that quote is it's a quote that came to me that really, truly depicts the picture of how powerful the mind is. If you place yourself at the center of every problem and solution and understand that it's all your observation and changing your perspective and angle, you will find the solution to anything that comes up for you that you feel is challenging. So it all starts and ends with you in mind.
Awesome, man. So Mike, last question here. Where do you see yourself in 5 years or even 10 years from now?
Oh, geez. Well, hopefully alive. So hopefully alive. I see myself. Yeah, right. I mean, hopefully back here in 5 years. No, I would say I've written a couple books, married with a family, and inspiring more and more people to help them live the lives that they want to, and really expanding my practice, continuing to work with amazing people, and really being able to be an amazing father and parent and partner, and striving in excellence in all areas of my life to the best of my ability.
And do you also do any like speaking engagements or anything like that?
Yeah, I do tons of it. Before COVID, I was doing speaking engagements. I was jumping on press, do a lot of podcast interviews. I'm actually on the podcast tour circuit right now, which has been so fun. It's been great talking to all the different shows and the different genres and audiences. So yes, I do speaking engagements. I may have a couple coming up later this year, so I'll keep you posted on that. But yes, I love speaking. It's really fun. And I'm actually going to be doing a workshop pretty soon later this year of teaching people some mindset principles, really, creating operating systems for themselves to overcome their own limiting beliefs. So instead of trying to overcome them and then leave and think they graduated, it's kind of more of I have actually a tool that I can use. So when the old programming pops up, I'm able to discern it, be able to resolve the limiting belief that's coming up, or whatever pops up to me is no longer serving me, and being able to navigate that as well. So I'll probably have a workshop coming out pretty soon. But yes, speaking engagements are great, and love doing podcasts.
Awesome, man. So I have one final question though, too. Obviously you're a coach, but we
Yeah,
talked about levels, right? Leveling
sure.
up. Who is your coach? Who do you look up to?
Yeah, there's a couple coaches that I look up to that have just been really truly phenomenal. I learned a lot from Peter Crone. He's a really amazing coach. They call him the mind architect. A lot of Peter's teachings over the last 2 years have truly impacted me. Being in proximity towards him through just some of his curriculum and some of his educational content has been phenomenal. Tony Robbins is a really great one. Everybody knows Tony. His content
Right.
is just really phenomenal. And I would probably say one more coach for me that I think is really, truly great, or just an influential person that I've actually learned a lot, is Jesse Itzler's one of them.
Yeah.
Jesse Itzler's really done a phenomenal job. I learned a lot from Jesse about being able to have anything that you want, and just being all in by doing that. And just that type of mindset of just committing and just going all in on that. That's really been truly impactful. And obviously there's many people that I can name that are phenomenal coaches and influences in my life, but those three have really truly impacted me, and they've really taught me in a lot about just how to approach life.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just what works for you and what doesn't.
Right. I love
Yeah.
Jesse Ellisler, man. I got the chance to meet him at a
Oh,
10X
cool.
conference down in, I think it was Miami.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. I actually met Jesse through a friend of mine on a couple calls. I was like listening to him. He had joined a mastermind group that we had put together, and he had come on, and through a friend that was hosting it, and getting to just pick his brain, just getting to just listen to how he thinks is really truly phenomenal.
Yeah.
Watching him really how he approaches his business, how he approaches his family. It's really a great example of how it doesn't matter how successful you are, how much money you have, you can still be involved in people's lives. You can still care. You can still have relationships, and you really truly can have everything you want. That's a guy that I think embodies time being an illusion. I don't think he really,
Yeah.
I,
Definitely.
yeah, I don't think he believes in like time as a construct. I really think he's just like, he wakes up and he just goes.
Goes. Yeah. With all the things that he's doing, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So
Yeah. It's been great.
yeah, yeah. Well, Mike, man, I appreciate the time.
Oh,
Talking
thank you.
about coaching and mindset, and obviously your book, your latest book that's coming out. And again, for those listening and watching, it's the Road Ahead and Miles Behind. Make sure you check it out on Amazon and or Barnes and Noble. Definitely have to check that out. Um, and Mike, one final thing: where can they follow you and where can they support you at?
Yeah, man. So you can, if you are interested in connecting with me on social media, Instagram is my biggest platform. And you can follow me at Mike.Liguori. So that's MikeLiguori. And you could also go to my website as well, MikeLiguori.com, MikeLiguori.com.
Awesome, Mike. I appreciate the time, man, and hopefully I'll hear from you soon.
Thank you, my man. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful to be here, and thank you for giving me the space and opportunity to have a conversation with you today.
Awesome. Take care.
All right, be well.